Warning, the following program has been rated T for truth.
You can't handle the truth!
Oh, we think you can. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report with your host, truth warrior and mythbuster Kathleen Wells. The place where we distinguish fact from fiction, where data is used to drive points home, and where Kathleen takes the position that Democrats and black politicians have destroyed black America. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report. Now, your host, Kathleen Wells.
Good evening, and welcome to the Naked Truth Report, my truth warriors and mythbusters. It's me, your truth warrior in person, Kathleen Wells, host of the Naked Truth Report. And do you hear my intro? What do I say? I say, welcome to the new Naked Truth Report, where Kathleen Wells believes that Democrats and black politicians have destroyed black America, right? I mean, could it be clearer than this last week? I mean, for me, it's been clear the whole time. Not the whole time, but it's been clear since I started really getting into research and digging into the data and learning the history. It became clear. But the evidence is just so clear this last week. Because why? The Democrats are basically shutting down the government for DACA. I mean, I don't care how you slice it and dice it. You know, they want to add this, that, and the other, like they added the chip and blah, blah, whatever. But, essentially, when you break it down, what the Democrats are doing is that they are shutting down the government for DACA. That's what they're doing. I mean, this is so fascinating to me because it should be so obvious. This is why I say, Republicans are smarter than Democrats. You know why? Because Republican parents at least have the common sense to know that they put their children and their grandchildren's future before foreign kids. I mean, that's just like so basic. There's certain things to life. It's like life 101. And this is just like such a basic idea. I mean, it is so fundamental. It is so simple to grab that idea, that concept, that you put your children before foreign children. I mean, and if you don't do that, you're a bad parent. So basically, Democrats are bad parents. That's the position I take. And I think it's a reasonable position. Well, I know for certain that my father would put me before foreign kids. Right? I mean, you out there and listening in Truth Warrior land, don't you think your parents would put you before foreign kids? I mean, that's like a simple concept. So anyway, there's so much to talk about this week. I really wish that this Sunday, I really wish I had 2 hours. I don't have 2 hours, but the government shutdown is so obvious to me. I've been saying forever and a day that Democrats and black politicians have destroyed black America. Well, and that's true. When you look at the data, all you have to do is go to a city. Go to any major city and look at the state of affairs. Go downtown, go to Skid Row and look at the state of affairs. But now we see, this is so obvious to me. It is so obvious that the Democrats are I don't care what they say. I don't care how they twist it, what rhetoric they use, right? But when you get down to the nitty-gritty, Democrats are they're willing to close our government, to shut down our government, and neglect our military in favor of people who aren't even in the country legally. I mean, that should really wake some folks up. I'm not kidding, right? That should really wake some folks up. In fact, I want, Sullivan, would you play the clip with Malcolm X? So, I just want my listeners to hear this. Could you play that, please?
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. They see that the whites are so evenly divided that every time they vote, the race is so close they have to go back and count the votes all over again. And which means that any block, any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You can keep Johnson in Washington, D.C., or you can send him back to his Texas cotton patch. You're the one who sent Kennedy to Washington. You're the one who put the present Democratic administration in Washington, D.C. The whites were evenly divided. It was the fact that you threw 80% of your votes behind the Democrats that put the Democrats in the White House. When you see this, you can see that the Negro vote is the key factor. And despite the fact that you are in a position to be the determining factor, what do you get out of it? The Democrats have been in Washington, D.C. only because of the Negro vote. They've been down there 4 years. And all other legislation they wanted to bring up, they brought it up and gotten it out of the way, and now they bring up you. And now they bring up you. You put them first and they put you last. Because you're a chump. A political chump. In Washington, D.C., in the House of Representatives, there are 257 who are Democrats. Only 177 are Republicans. In the Senate, there are 67 Democrats. Only 33 are Republicans. The party that you backed controls 2/3 of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and still they can't keep their promise to you because you're a chump. Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race. And what kind of alibi do they come up with? They try and pass the buck to the Dixiecrats. Now, back during the days when you were blind, deaf, and dumb, ignorant, politically immature, naturally you went along with that. But today, as your eyes come open and you develop political maturity, you're able to see and think for yourself. And you can see that a Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat in disguise. Whenever the Negroes keep the Democrats in power, they're keeping the Dixiecrats in power. This is true. A vote for a Democrat is nothing but a vote for a Dixiecrat. I know you don't like me saying that, but I'm not the kind of person who come here to say what you like. I'm going to tell you the truth whether you like it or not. Up here in the North, you have the same thing. The Democratic Party don't do it. They don't do it that way. They got a thing that they call gerrymandering. They maneuver you out of power. Even though you can vote, they fix it so you're voting for nobody. They got you going and coming. In the South, they're outright political wolves. In the North, they're political foxes. A fox and a wolf are both canine. Both belong to the dog family. Now, you take your choice. You're going to choose a northern dog or a southern dog. Because either dog you choose, I guarantee you'll still be in the doghouse.
Okay, that was Malcolm X. That was decades ago. I don't remember. I'm sure that was in the 60s. The issue is this. Malcolm X was informing black Americans to be sophisticated. If you vote Democrat, you're a chump, you're a traitor to your race, and I'm going to add, you're a bad parent. You're putting foreign kids above your own kid. That makes you, in my book, a bad parent. I mean, you don't have sense enough to know you don't put foreign kids above your own kid? You don't have your own kid's future? You don't have that much sense? This is what I want to say to black Americans who keep voting Democrat. You got to screw loose. No doubt about it, because it's obvious in the data. And now, let me tell you another thing. This is what I want to say. Chuck Schumer, it is Schumer's showdown. These folks, these Democrats are acting like this illegal immigration business or immigration is a new thing. They're acting like, oh my God, we got to rush and hurry and get these immigrant kids, these illegal immigrant kids, their benefits or whatever, that silly thing that Obama executed, that executive order, DACA. Obama got us in this mess. But let me tell you something. They have been talking about how illegal immigration has adversely impacted they've been talking about how immigration adversely impacts black America since the 1800s. Frederick Douglass was talking about it. But let's fast forward to the last few decades. Terry Anderson on this show was talking about how illegal immigration adversely impacts black America and immigration, large numbers. Barbara Jordan in the 80s was talking about how immigration adversely impacts black America. Let's keep the numbers down, she said in the 80s. So these Democrats they've known for decades. In fact, what was it? In 1986, I think Reagan signed the amnesty. And the Democrats then said they were going to build a wall. They didn't build a wall. So now we're back to square one with millions and millions of people in the country illegally. In California, we've got more than 1 million people illegally in California. And California heads the state, heads the nation in poverty. If you can't connect those dots, you've got screws loose at this point. Anyway, my guest is wonderful. I love my guest because he uses, he knows what he's talking about, and he knows the numbers. In fact, I mentioned before that when I was back last year in September, I went back to D.C. to attend a workshop on immigration, and I met my guest, Roy Beck. Mr. Beck, I love him because he is the president and founders of Numbers USA, and he has a wonderful way of illustrating how immigration is impacting America adversely. How the large numbers that the Congress has insisted that we employ to use as the large numbers of immigrants coming into America is destroying America. It's unsustainable. And it's important to know the numbers. You guys know how I'm a data girl. I'm a data girl. I go by the data. I don't want to hear rhetoric. That's all that politicians give us is rhetoric. Talk is cheap. What does the data say? What does the data say? What do the numbers show? And this is why I love my guest, Roy Beck. Mr. Beck, thank you for joining me on the Naked Truth Report.
Well, good evening, and it's great to be on this show again. I spent many a late night with Terry on this show, and I had the great privilege of being on a show here in Washington on some of the early cable, same night as he was, and drove Terry around. It was his first visit to Washington, D.C., and visiting all the monuments. And goodness, as terrible as things were that Terry was talking about then, they're so much worse in Los Angeles, aren't they?
It's absolutely, we've been ravaged. In fact, the LA Times wrote an article about how California is now the capital of poverty in the nation. So Terry was
incredible.
talking about...
to think that really how wonderful it would be for California if you could go back to 1990 to what Terry was railing about then. Those would be the good old days compared with what they are now in California. It's tragic. But there's still something to save, isn't there? I mean, there's something to save in California, and certainly we got to save the rest of the country from going the way of California.
Well, we're trying to save it. As listeners, my guest is Mr. Roy Beck. He is wonderful. He is the president and founder of Numbers USA. I employ all of you to go to YouTube and check out his Gumballs YouTube video. It's it's illustrative. He gives an excellent example. And one of the things that you say, Mr. Beck, is that the key factor in immigration is the numbers. Tell us why and give us some of those numbers.
You bet. And please, Kathleen, it's Roy. We've talked to each other in person, haven't we? So we're first name basis. From the very beginning, and I've been working with this. I began working on this as a newspaper reporter in the early 1980s, and then left the newspaper business in 1990. I've been working on it full time ever since. And I've always felt that we do best if we focus on the policy. It is aggravating, of course, people who come from other countries and break our laws. They have broken the laws. They've done something wrong. But we're almost equally damaged by this massive level of legal immigration. And legal immigrants, we can't complain about the legal immigrants in the sense that they've done it the right way. They followed the rules. The problems that come from all these legal immigrants being here are the problems caused by our policy. And so that's why we've tried to always focus on the numbers. That it's Congress's decision in 1965 to increase legal immigration from 250,000 a year to what would eventually be over 500,000 a year. And in 1990, Congress decided to increase it from a little over 500,000 a year to 1 million a year. It's been 1 million a year since 1990. That's legal immigration. These are all people who are given lifetime work permits, and that's a policy. The numbers that have changed the labor market, have devalued labor, which means that the real wages in so many occupations have gone down over the last 20, 25 years. So we focus on the numbers. So often we'll hear politicians they'll say, well, we'll take these lottery numbers, we'll take these lotteries that just bring people in by chance, which is really stupid, and we'll just add those to just employment base, and we'll make them higher skilled. Well, that just means that we're going to cut off a lot of the avenues for our own kids to go into professions and occupations that would go into those higher middle class jobs. The numbers have to come down. And, in California, I don't have to tell your audience that it's the fact that there are millions upon millions of foreign-born people, both legal and illegal, with lifetime work permits that has totally changed the opportunity for, especially for Californians with less resources, and disproportionately African Americans in California. My book that I wrote in 1996 that really spent 2 chapters on the history of how mass immigration has been used to hold down black Americans. I'll just say briefly that what almost every expert finds is that when you provide a foreign labor force, the business owners, the employers, will almost always prefer that foreign labor force to native-born African Americans. And that's just a fact, and therefore, it's always happened. It's happened for 150 years.
Exactly. Frederick Douglass talked about it in the 1800s. Marcus Garvey talked about it. W.E.B. Du Bois talked about it. And then
they all saw it.
All black intellectuals talked about it, except those, we're being betrayed now by black politicians. And in fact, this is why I say Martin Luther King betrayed black Americans, is because when the Civil Rights Bill was passed in 1965, they also passed the Immigration Act of 1965. And, Martin Luther King sold black Americans out to the Democrats. And, I played Malcolm X. If Malcolm X knew it, Martin Luther King knew it. It's been downhill for black Americans. It was like a hoodwink by the Democrats.
Yeah, the fact is not every Democrat knew what was going on there. I worked with one of those Democrats in the 90s that is Senator Eugene McCarthy, who ran for president in 1968. He was very much one of the major people that worked with Ted Kennedy to pass that 1965 Act. Now, in the 1990s, he wrote a book and said,
exactly,
I never intended for the numbers to go up like that. It was a colossal mistake. And I spoke at several events with him in which, unlike most politicians, he actually said it was a mistake and tried to correct it. Of course, he wasn't in Congress anymore. But, yes, one of the things that happened was that the Democrats became more and more, as the years went by, became more and more addicted to the Democratic votes that they were bringing in from overseas. And it doesn't matter. You can, and I know we're going to talk about the shutdown because right now this is just it's horrific. The Democratic senators right now they are willing to do almost anything negative to the American worker and particularly to African Americans because they have to continue chain migration because it is an international Democratic voter registration program.
And, this is interesting. Talk about how immigration, well, let's talk about this showdown. They want to call it Trump's showdown, or shutdown rather, but it's Schumer's. Schumer owns this because, as I said, in 1986, we did amnesty, and the Democrats promised a wall. And in fact, just a few years back, Democrats, Hillary and Obama were talking, and Bill Clinton have talked about a wall. And they talked about ending chain migration. In fact, Dick Durbin talked about that.
Yeah. And what's happened this last week, I'm very, as a former newsman, I was a newspaper reporter for 25 years. I went to the University of Missouri School of Journalism. This is not the journalism today that really was the professional journalism of most of the 20th century. It's very different now, and I'm so upset. Whether or not someone agrees with the idea of providing an amnesty to these 690,000 DACA recipients, the fact is that this shutdown was not about the DACA amnesty. It was about chain migration. The President Trump had agreed and would agree to a compromise that gives these DACA people amnesty. Most of the Republican leaders and most of the Republicans in Congress are ready to agree with the DACA amnesty, but what they say is we can't give another amnesty and keep chain migration going. We can't let every one of these people, illegal aliens who gets an amnesty, be able to bring in their extended family, and every one of them bring in their spouses and their extended families, etc. They say we've had 7 of them so far. I'll talk about that in a minute, but we've had 7 since 1986. 7 amnesties, all of them chain migration amnesties. And so the Republicans and President Trump are saying you can't have another amnesty without ending chain migration. The Democrats are saying no, we have to have chain migration. That's why the government was shut down on Friday night, because they want to continue, they insist on continuing chain migration because they don't want to give up that constant flow of new Democratic voters.
The cynicism behind that. And, Democrats need to wake up to what's going on.
It's very hard.
Democrat voters have to wake up.
Yeah. When the news media, the mainstream news media, just on this issue more than almost any other, is involved in disinformation. It's hard for the average voter to get what's going on, and for Democrats, there's just no Democratic leaders anymore for them to look to. Until 2010, we still could count on 50 to 60 Democrats in Congress who would fairly routinely vote on the side of the American workers on this issue. But in 2010, the Obamacare ended up getting most of those people voted out of office, and since then others have retired. We don't have any, not a single Democrat in Congress, all those Democrats, who will stand up for American workers and say, it really is time to dial back this immigration. That's a case where our feeling has been is until the Democrats suffer some steady defeats because of this issue, I don't know whether the Democratic Party can be brought back to some of its roots of being pro-worker, and for that matter, of being pro-African American.
They have, and all. Listen, when I was back in D.C. in September, I attended the Congressional Black Caucus, and I spoke.
Oh my.
Yeah, the Legislative Council. And I spoke with my Congresswoman, Karen Bass, and I spoke with Al Sharpton, and I spoke with Barbara Lee, and I spoke with, what's the woman, Sheila Jackson Lee, and I spoke with Steny Hoyer. They don't even want to, they're in denial. They will not admit anything. When you tell them the data, I know the data, like for every 10% increase in immigration, Black America loses 1/3 of 1% of her wealth. There has been a 700% increase in immigration since the 70s. I don't understand why my people don't understand this. All you have to do is go down to Skid Row and see how vast it is now. They can't connect the dots.
I wonder, Kathleen, and you live in the middle of this. I live in the middle of it here too, because Washington D.C. is a huge immigration destination area, but it's not been as devastated as Los Angeles. But
in D.C., they have mostly African immigrants, and that's something that I discussed last week. It's like we are Black Americans. So when President Trump says those companies are crappy, which they are, some of them, not all, they're underdeveloped. That's why they're coming here. We should not be angry. We're Americans. We're not Africans. We're not Haitians. I discussed that last week. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry for interrupting. Yeah.
Yeah. No. That's all right. I guess I wonder about the role of race baiting. I feel like that it reminds me a little bit of the old South, where you had all of these lower scaled, lower class whites who were manipulated by power structures to accept really a bad economic situation by making them feel good and better and developing these racist feelings and encouraging these racist feelings against the black workers in the same situation. In other words, many people have commented that racism in the South enabled power structures to hold the white workers down as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, they racialize everything. I hear the music.
I feel that seems like that's what's happened on the immigration issue.
Yeah, they racialize.
Black Americans have been told over and over again by the power structures that people who are concerned about immigration are racist, and they've created this racism. I'd say, black against white. That it's better to have all of these immigrants come in because then there'll be fewer. Whites will be a smaller percentage,
and they think they'll be comrades, allies.
Yes.
There's the music.
Right. The idea is that.
Wait, Roy. There's the music. I need to take a break. We'll come right back and we'll continue on. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Kathleen Wells, the host of the Naked Truth Report, wants to hear from you. Just like our borders, the phone lines, well, they're wide open. Call in at 866-870-KRLA. That's 866-870-5752. 866-870-KRLA.
Welcome back. This is the Naked Truth Report. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells, and I'm joined, my guest today is Roy Beck, who is the president and founder of Numbers USA. I employ all of you. Am I saying that word? Employ. Is that implore? Okay. Implore. I implore all of you to go to the YouTube. Go to YouTube and check out his YouTube videos, Roy Beck, and it's Numbers USA. You got to check it out, and check out the one on gumballs. Okay, Roy, we were talking about how Democrats racialize everything, and that sort of just hooks people in, hooks blacks into this notion that race is the determining factor regarding everything. They racialize it.
I just, I've seen, unfortunately, I've seen one black congressperson after another turn against the non-working African Americans in this country toward bringing in a foreign labor force and to try to convince their constituents that it's okay because if you oppose high immigration, you're a racist. And if you were to agree with people who want to reduce immigration, then you're joining the white supremacists. It's so full. And here's how bad it is, Kathleen. I've been hearing one mainly one Democrat after another, and then also a few people like Senator Flake, the Republican from Arizona, who will say that it's racist to want to end chain migration, that this is hard line, that this is white nationalism, that it's that it's like moving toward fascism. Well, do they realize that Barbara Jordan she went to Congress in 1995 and recommended that chain migration be ended. She was the chair, as I know you tell people, she was the chair of that bipartisan commission. This is not a conservative Republican, but Barbara Jordan was a liberal Democrat her whole life.
Yeah.
But she, in this bipartisan commission, that's a bipartisan solution, and that they recommended you've got to bring immigration numbers down, and you've got to end chain migration. And now they're saying that this is extremism, it's racism. So this is how far off we are. Thank goodness for programs like your own and for your work, and there are many others. Not all alone. But if it weren't for people like yourself, there wouldn't be any truth breaking through at all.
There wouldn't be. Yeah, and it's listen. Let's see. A Latino man just chopped off the head of a black man on Skid Row. Chopped off his head, chopped off his arms. His last name was Garcia. It's in the LA Times. Chopped off his head on Skid Row. They were in a hotel. Chopped off his head, chopped off his arms, right? Okay. Who was the man that, Sean, I can't think of his name, whose son was killed by an illegal immigrant. This is the thing. Afro-Mexicans have just been recognized in Mexico. Afro-Latinos are treated like second-class citizens the blackest part of Cuba is the poorest part, right?
Yeah, I know a fellow that you may have dealt with, I don't know, Tom Broadwater, who's head of Americans for Work, and he's an African-American professional, and he spent quite a bit of time in Latin American countries working for his wife was actually in the Foreign Service, and one of the things that he talks about is the color racism, and it goes by shade, very much by shade in Latin America. There's not a particular part of the world in which prejudices don't exist. And we can't pretend that they don't exist here too. But one of the things that I know is that when you bring in 1 million new people every year from countries all over the world who have their own ideas about who's in the pecking order, people who are African Americans whose families have been in this country for 400 years are not going to come out better off because of that.
Exactly. I'm trying to reach my people and try to get them to understand it's not about skin color. It's about culture, and we are Americans. And even Africans are coming to America to take your job, black man, right?
Yeah.
It's culture. We're Americans.
In America, I don't think it is. I think it's less. The prejudice is less color related and more cultural related, and that's what we find is that employers all over the country, they will gladly employ a black person who is an immigrant from Africa or from the Caribbean over a black person whose family's been in this country for 200, 300, 400 years. Because they have a cultural bias against African Americans that are native to this country. That I don't mean everybody does, but I mean there are many who have that prejudice that they don't have the prejudice against people who are from Africa.
Well, why is that? Why do you think that is?
Well, it's partly because people who come here from other countries, whether it's Africa or anywhere else, they are hungry. They are coming from a place in which this place is so much better. And at the beginning, they are willing to do all kinds of things that Americans don't feel like they have to do. I mean, they will work overtime without getting paid or without getting paid time and a half. They will do without certain kinds of benefits. In other words, immigrants are always more willing to work at a lower scale than Americans are, and it's not even so much wages as it is the working conditions. As many people say, Americans, whatever their race, ethnicity, want to be treated like Americans. They want to work like Americans, be paid like Americans. And this is what happens, of course, is that the immigrants' children and grandchildren, of course, they want to be paid and work like Americans too. So that's why the employers, they prefer people who are immigrants, who have grown up in another country, because they will be so thankful for being here at all that they will put up with stuff that Americans won't put up with.
And they're willing to take less wages also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and then of course the numbers. I keep coming back to the numbers. We have there are an estimated around 46 million foreign-born people in this country. 46 million foreign-born people. Now,
46 million foreign-born people in this country. And how many, and the Pew Research always says we have 11 million illegal immigrants. I think it's more than that, don't you?
Well, it very well could be. I think 11, well, actually, now it's the official number is more like 12, but I think that's the minimum. I don't think it's probably a lot more than that because of some of the work the Center for Immigration Studies has done. Dr. Camarada has pretty well convinced me that you can't hide that many. I think the reason we think there's a lot more than that is because so many people who are legal immigrants, because they don't speak the language and they cling so strongly to their native cultures, we assume that a lot of the people who are here legally are here illegally. And it just gets back to my point. Legal immigration is just as harmful as illegal immigration overall because the numbers create an oversupply of labor, and everybody that's born somewhere else, whether they're legal or illegal, are going to be willing to cut corners for the employers, more corners than the Americans will. It's just the way it works. And so 46 million, I think, is enough. In fact, polling shows that the vast majority of Americans think it shouldn't go any higher than 46 million. That's enough.
Oh, yeah, we're ready. We're done. We don't want in fact, we want a moratorium on immigration. Give Americans an opportunity to get their footing. Listen, California needs to get out of this poverty position we're in. So we don't need any more immigrants. We need America. You know, what I like what Trump is doing. He's changing the economy it's churning, it's thriving now. And this is an opportunity for Americans to sort of get their head above water in terms of employment and economic opportunities.
It is. And, you know, things won't happen overnight. The greatness won't happen overnight. But, boy, it will start to get better. I don't believe that we can get immigration down to zero. There's some reasons for it. But if we could go next year without any immigration at all, people at the bottom of the ladder would start feeling the difference. It would be different than piling another million people on next year. Mm-hmm. The law of supply and demand it can't be repealed. It doesn't have to be enforced. When you flood a labor market, I've got in my book that I wrote back in the 90s. I was just taking a look at it. I look at one case after another that were studied, had as you say, has the data to back it up. The janitorial workforce in downtown office buildings in Los Angeles, the construction workforce in Miami, one place after another, where Americans in general, but African Americans in particular, they had middle class. These were occupations that were middle class jobs with benefits, decent wages, paid vacations, and those markets were flooded with foreign workers. Businesses would hire the foreign workers. They would then use their lower wages to outbid the companies that provided benefits. And what you saw in downtown Los Angeles, you saw nearly all African American workers were driven out of those jobs because their companies were driven out. It happened in one city after another where this happened. And so some of these were stepping stone jobs. Some of them are jobs that now look like stepping stone, but then they were middle class jobs. I mean, if we need our office buildings cleaned, then this ought to be an American job. People ought to make middle class wages if they're cleaning. If we think we need our offices cleaned by people.
Oh, and you can't. Let me tell you, you can't even find a black worker working a construction job. In fact, I had a building inspector tell me that at least 80% of the workers on a construction job are illegal, and we're facing a construction boom. These people, and these are the lies that these people tell, these talking heads and these Democrats. They go on Washington Journal. They just lie. They say, oh, remember they used to always say, oh, but, illegal immigrants take jobs that Americans don't want to do. As if Americans don't want to work in the construction industry or even janitorial service. My neighbor is a black man and he cuts my lawn. When a person there is no job a American won't do.
Well, and so many of these jobs, they look at these jobs now and they go, well, gosh, I mean, and I hear this all the time from Democratic members of Congress. They go, you should not expect an African American to do those kind of jobs. An African American shouldn't have to be a roofer. And well, the thing is,
roofer, construction is a good job.
Well, I roofed my way through college, and it's hard work. But I was paid decently. The thing is, these jobs have been taken as middle-class jobs. They've been driven into near-poverty jobs. But the thing is, if we relied on Americans to do the jobs, they would be good jobs again. And they are jobs with dignity. They've turned so many of these jobs and acted like, I'd be embarrassed to have my son. We've had
please. All jobs are jobs.
To have my son do that job.
Oh, please. That's so ridiculous. In fact, I saw on my social media, a Brazilian woman told me, in fact, she got me blocked on Facebook because I said something to her, but she said to me, black men don't do it's beneath a black man to do a construction job. Can you see, this is the crazy thing. Another thing I want to mention is that, they say that there are 690,000 DACA kids, and now I hear their numbers are something like the Dreamers or something like 3 to 4 million.
Yes.
Can you believe that? Do you hear that out there, listeners? There are 3 to 4 million Dreamers.
Yeah. That was Schumer's offer to the president last week. Was he came in and his compromise was instead of the 690,000 DACA, he changed it to 3 million dreamers. And instead of ending chain migration, which Trump wanted, he said, we're going to leave it exactly the same numbers, and we're going to leave the lottery the same numbers. That was his agreement. And the media are acting like somehow or another Trump reneged on some kind of promise to go along with the compromise. That wasn't a compromise.
Yeah, the media carries the water for the Democrats. That's what they care, and people should watch Fox, because once you get off the Democratic plantation, actually Hannity and Tucker Carlson and Maria Bartiromo, is that her name right? Is her name Bartiromo? But anyway, those three are very intelligent, and they've revealed this information about this classified memo. That the Obama administration did spy on the Trump campaign during the 2016 during the campaign. The Obama administration did spy, and this classified memo, release the memo is the hashtag, is going to be released within about approximately 19 days. And, heads are going to roll. This is what I hear.
That's going to be interesting. And by the way, you said something earlier about the 86 amnesty thing, which was supposed to be, and I think Reagan believed this was going to be the case. It was going to be an amnesty in trade for ending the jobs magnet. Mm-hmm. And but I don't know if you've heard this, but because I was working on it at the time. But Chuck Schumer is the person who helped put the language into the law that made sure that it would never be enforced. That's the same Chuck Schumer that's running the show right now.
Oh, he's such a snake, right?
Yeah, it's the idea that somehow or another we're going to would get a deal that's good for America from Chuck Schumer is impossible. So I'm so proud of the president for standing his ground. I'm so proud of Senator Cotton and Senator Perdue that if they've done such a great job of pushing getting rid of chain migration that now the president wants him in his office when Schumer's coming. He feels like he needs to have them on each side of him to protect himself.
Well, yeah, I saw that, when Dianne Feinstein was sort of like, oh, we can get a clean bill on DACA. We can get a clean bill. And, Trump said, oh, okay, but, and Tom Cotton, or one of the guys, had to sort of like nudge Trump and said, no, that's not what when they say a clean bill, that means they don't want a wall.
That's right. It's a dirty deal. A clean bill is a dirty deal for Americans. That's the deal.
Right.
So there a lot of there is some hopefulness, because right now we are seeing a lot of Republican leaders who are saying that any deal has to end chain migration, that never said that before. This is really something new, and what we've got to do, what every voter, every constituent that cares about this, is we got to be calling these senators and telling them hold firm. By the way, Numbers USA is the website, numbersusa.com, and everything's free on our website. And if you give us you sign up and give us your zip code, we will provide you with the free means to phone call, to send emails, what your members of Congress need to hear, and also often somebody to call. You're probably not going to get much out of out of Harris and Feinstein, but there often are people in other states that really need to hear from somebody from California. So,
oh, really?
The only way that we've gotten where we are now is because of, frankly, it's because of the internet and talk radio.
Okay, so
that have broken through.
Okay, Truth Warriors, Mythbusters out there, my listeners, please sign up. Go to the Numbers USA. Is the numbersusa.com?
That's correct.
Numbersusa.com. Listen, Truth Warriors and Mythbusters. California is leads the nation in poverty. Amazing.
It was a beautiful. That is a 30-year period.
Exactly.
Being at the top.
We were the best. We were the golden state. You should go down to Skid Row. Listen, Truth Warriors and Mythbusters. Go to We've got to do things, okay? We've got to do things. We must be proactive. We're not going to just sit on the sidelines and watch California, fall off into the Pacific Ocean. So go to numbersusa.com and give them your email address, and you'll give them what? Some information?
Yeah, no, they'll go on there and they'll see a place to go to an action board, and it'll just tell them what to do, and then we've been sending emails every single day with new things to do every day.
Oh, that's wonderful.
We make it easy.
Yeah. So in other words, we should be calling members of the Senate and other states,
Yes.
Let them know that we are drowning in California with immigration, high numbers, and illegal immigration. Please do that. Okay, listeners, thank you very much. So what else do we want to say? Oh, the other thing that I want to mention is that they said that I saw some documentation or some information that indicated that 70% of these DACA students barely speak English well, and less than half have a high school diploma.
And hardly any of them have actually cured cancer yet either. It's been kind of laughable because there's supposedly about 3 million of these people, and yes, they found some valedictorians. They found some people that have been amazing in college, but the average person, exactly is what you're saying, is this is a joke. In terms of, I hear these senators, especially these Democratic senators, say these are the best and brightest of America.
They just say
that's what they think of Americans. They dislike Americans. They want to elect a new electorate. That's is their idea, and it's so insulting.
It's so insulting. Black Americans, you don't know who you are. You're a direct descendant of slaves. You've been in this country 400 years. You're going to be replaced by people from. Who are just here a few, you think people who just arrived last night have something over you? They're better than you? They're more American than you? They can't even speak English.
Plus, our affirmative action program allows companies to fill all their quotas without having to hire any African Americans. It's the minute you arrive here from most countries in the world, you are considered to be an oppressed minority,
right?
And you can be hired and be considered as the same as if you've hired an African American who may have been disadvantaged from 400 years of slavery and Jim Crow.
Okay, and see, this is how activist judges on the Supreme Court have bastardized the 14th Amendment. Because the 14th Amendment was intended specifically for the direct descendants of slaves. Now everybody and their mother can get benefits from the 14th Amendment. Roy, I'm going to have you back on because I love what you have to say about the numbers. I want to get into more detail, and I want to have you on again where you can have callers call in and ask you questions. How does that sound?
You bet. Great talking with you. Keep California from sliding off in the ocean.
We're trying hard here. Thank you, Roy, for being a guest on the Naked Truth Report. I want my listeners to please go to my YouTube channel, the Naked Truth Report. Yeah, that's it. The Naked Truth Report YouTube channel, and subscribe. Please, 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 because we're trying to get some numbers. Numbers matter. So we're trying to get some numbers so we can get some movement here, right? So please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe, and also join the Naked Truth Report on Facebook. And this is my love song to those with deep roots in Los Angeles, deep roots in California, and deep roots in America. Thank you.
America.